I was in Armley in Leeds for quite some while. I think I was in there for 6-9 months before I got transferred to Long Lartin, which is down near Evesham, and it's a long-term prison that is. I requested that I get moved to Long Lartin, and that succeeded, so I got moved there. So it was easier for my parents to visit me, and visitors could bring food in for prisoners to eat. And
what else?
Yeah, I mean, my mum used to make me Sosmix pies.
Well, I suppose just it was food in also that you could trade, right? If it wasn't just to eat.
You had to eat it. You couldn't take it with you. You had to eat it there and then. You had to eat it at the table.
Okay. Yeah.
You see, but you see, when my friends came to visit me, I used to say to them, don't bring food, because I want to talk to you. I want to have a conversation with you. I don't want to be sat there eating all the time. And
that's exactly why they brought it, though, Ronnie.
To shut me up. Well,
I was just waiting for Roger
but
to
with
say
my parents, my parents, there wasn't much, they weren't involved in the animal liberation movement, and so there wasn't really very much to talk to them about. So I think it was 2 visits a month. It was one every 2 weeks or something there. I think later on in my prison sentence, you could have a visit every week. But
I always think once you get a cell on your own, you're kind of set up then, really, aren't you? Because you don't really have that much trouble. Although, I mean, there's a couple of times when I was at Wymont, they used to have an induction wing. So there was like 4 wings. One was induction, and there was 3 wings. And so people who were arrested together, especially the ones who ended up grassing each other and stuff, they were having to put on different wings to keep them apart. But every now and again, they would like cross over, manage to get into the different wing where they're not supposed to be. And I remember being in a cell once with this guy, and suddenly these knives and everything were being flashed around. And so he was at the door, kind of with a knife going out, and they were at the door with a knife coming in. Yeah. So that was a bit hairy, but those kind of things are pretty few and far between, really.
They kind of are, really. I mean, most of the problems and the violence between prisoners that I witnessed in prison was to do with drugs. There'd be drug dealers, drug barons in the prison who'd get drugs smuggled in, usually on a visit.
That's a different word for prison officer, isn't it, right?
Well, yes. I mean, there were some prison officers involved in it as well, but I think...
Well, they had a weird policy in my prison, because they would never admitted this publicly, of course, is that they were very, very tolerant of cannabis. In fact, they used to encourage cannabis parties and stuff. But, I mean, they would clamp down heavily if anybody made any homemade hooch, alcohol. But they liked people to be stoned, because it kind of calmed them down, and it ended up just being a party atmosphere. And there was one prison officer in my thing, and the cons would go to him with a rock of cannabis and said, "Do you reckon this is worth half an ounce, Gov?" And you go, no, knock it back, it's not big enough.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's it. I think there are kind of nastier drugs than that in prison now, from what I've heard. I mean, I think...
Well, that's the thing, though, you see, that what they would do is they would really try and clamp down on those, and then the ones that calmed everybody down, they would allow in.
But where I've seen it is where you'd get, like, say, a prisoner who's a drug dealer who'd have drugs smuggled in on a visit, and then sell those drugs to other prisoners and other prisoners would have cash smuggled in on visits, and they'd use that cash to pay the drug dealer, and then the drug dealer would smuggle the cash out on a visit, and that's how it would work. But sometimes you'd get a guy would get drugs and wouldn't pay for them, and so they then end up being beaten up by the drug dealer, by his mates. That would happen. That was the main cause, really, I think, of friction between prisoners. It was to do with drugs.